Hello, and welcome back to another careers webinar with Yale School of Management. Today, we're talking about crafting eye-catching resume bullet points. To catch the attention of a resume screener or an applicant tracking system, your resume needs to pop with the right words and the right phrases. To be invited to the interview, it needs to go a step further, previewing stories that pique the reader's interest and have them wanting to get to know you a bit more. So today we're going to talk about just what interviewers are looking for and how you can actually learn to craft bullet points that hit the target. Before we go on though, I want to ask you to please focus on our time together and feel free to ask questions through the Zoom Q&A function when they occur to you at any time during the presentation. I'll leave time at the end to address them. Today, the session is being recorded, as you know, and will be shared directly with those of you who are live with us today. And if you want to go back and review anything later on, you'll be able to find them filed under the Growing Alumni Careers webinar videos, which are on the SOM alumni portal under the career section. Click career at the top navigation, and then your career, and then career resources, and then resources and recorded webinars. That's also where Yale School of Management alumni can click through to make an appointment for coaching with me. In terms of our agenda today, I wanted to kind of use an analogy or a metaphor that we can take all the way through. We're going to get ready, and then we're going to aim, and then we're going to fire. We're talking about eye-catching bullet points, resume bullets. Before we put proverbial pen to paper, the fire part of the agenda, we're going to get ready with some foundational best practices, which is kind of like getting the archery kit together. Then we're going to take aim at what might be outstanding best practice or opportunities, and then bringing that, which is bringing that target into clearer focus. When we've done that, we will be able to know what we're targeting, and we'll be able to think about firing off a couple of great bullet points that are likely to really squarely hit those targets. At the end of the session, you're going to receive a request for feedback, and I would be grateful if you take just a couple of moments to complete that survey, because these sessions are for you. It's really helpful to know both what you found useful and what suggestions you might have for improvement. So thank you in advance for doing that. In terms of, just a top line resume reminder, one size doesn't fit all. Cutting to the chase, you do need to tailor your resume for every single job application. And that's why crafting effective bullet points is so important. In the pre-pandemic days, when we could regularly gather for social events, you probably thought about what you were going to wear to each event. You didn't wear the same thing every single day. You knew instinctively that one outfit isn't universally appropriate, and it wouldn't also fit as well for all types of activities. Same is true for your resume and the component bullet points. If you want your resume to fit an opportunity well, we really need to design it and tailor it for that specific purpose. As you consider companies you've already worked in, each has a distinct culture and different norms and unique ways of working. Your future companies are going to be differently unique. So a reminder of where the resume bullet points actually come into this process. As we discussed in successful search design, we're going to take this one step at a time. A cover letter creates context and sets them up to want to read a resume. It's not where you're telling your stories. Think attraction, where we're trying to kind of bring them in, as opposed to seduction, getting them to really kind of like you from the beginning and compelling them to do that. Bullet points are going to highlight your understanding of the role, where you show you have the skills and experience and perspective to thrive in their environment. The resume gets you to the interview because you've sufficiently piqued their interest and they want to learn more. And the interview is where they're going to ask questions about the bullet points that you've thoughtfully shared. You therefore have a fair amount of control about what they're going to ask because you've thought carefully about how you want to tell your story. This is another bit of advice I want to remind you of. We want to aim to hit the target. So that preparing place is going to help us to identify those opportunities. And I don't want you to kind of think about firing off 100,000 resumes when you're only wanting to get a couple of interviews. So which approach is more effective? Fire, 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 sending the same thing off to everybody, or ready, fire, wait, why did I miss the target? which I know some people are doing, and that's when they come to coaching. Our approach is going to be very simply, again, the ready, aim, and the fire. When you're getting ready to write your resume bullet points, reviewing the entire resume to make sure it's on point for the role you're focusing on is important. Or even when you're having an informational interview, you need to have a clear intention and you need to act accordingly. Knowing what the target is going to help you to shoot the right type and the right number of bullets to hit the target. Shooting every arrow in your quiver without aiming is just going to make your hand hurt. And sharing everything you've ever done in your resume and circulating it everywhere and never getting a call back, that's going to hurt worse. And I know that some people have smarted from that in the past without having an effective strategy. So I'm trying to protect you from that a little bit. A common strategy is reading through a job posting and tweaking bullet points from a standard template, and then making some minor edits to a summary statement or objective, and then sending the resume. I also wanted to point out this slide is pretty slick, right? Nice graphics, different colors. What does it really say though? Form over content is not the way to go, nor is one standard resume template. Believe it or not, except in certain creative roles where the resume is an opportunity to demonstrate your design skills, boring is better in a resume template. Get the job posting, scan to see if you can check all the boxes, make minor edits to your standard resume, adding their keywords, ta-da, send it off. Again, not what we're gonna do. Where this strategy goes sideways, we really don't know that much about a company, its culture, or the role that you're looking for. You might be missing the opportunity to sound like you already fit in. You're focusing on the past, what you've done for someone else. Maybe you have to do a few different versions of this standard resume for different job types, but your minor edits are sprinkling in keywords, not really supporting a thorough understanding of the environment and the role. Quick turnaround, you can get a lot of applications out here. You basically share everything, and then they can sift through and see what they might need. And I feel horrible to tell you this, but they're probably not going to take the time. What I would like you to think about doing instead is this new strategy. And we've talked about this before in other webinars. So I'm kind of trying to re-emphasize those pieces so we can see how everything fits together. We're going to take a more thoughtful approach. This is a bespoke approach to resume preparation and bullet point preparation. It takes more time and the returns are greater. Even if you're preparing a resume for an informational interview, or if you're in a rush, potentially without the chance to really thoroughly review your application or tailor the materials for the opportunity, having done some thoughtful research upfront about your target list of companies or the industry is going to help you to present your content in positively memorable ways that are going to pique the reader's interest and really hold their attention. Much of this work is going to be leverageable across multiple applications, assuming that you are applying for similar roles across companies. We'll speak about how a thoughtful brainstorm can make this process much more efficient in a few minutes. When you do tailor your bullet points and ultimately resumes for specific roles, you're significantly more likely to hit the target, increasing the likelihood that you're going to get the call for the interview. That's why we're doing this, right? In the interview, you're also going to be more well prepared because you have a great idea of what stories they're going to be interested in. The areas circled in red are where the magic really happens in this method. You'll understand how they think and translate what you did into language that's resonant to their company. And you'll learn this through looking at company websites, news, social media, and having informational interviews up front. You'll also have thought about the day-to-day work in the context of skills and outcomes that demonstrate your greater understanding than even they may have had in writing the job description. Oftentimes, you've heard me say this before, job descriptions are poorly written by people who haven't actually done the job. So you showing that you know what the job is all about is a big deal. In talking with others, you'll surface information that are going to help you to tailor your application, where you sound like you're part of the team already, and you understand the key metrics and the outcomes, as well as internal and external interdependencies and partnerships that are important. You're thinking about how you're creating value in context of their unique organization and who you'll partner with. And this is going to be super helpful when you get to the negotiation stage of your job application and offer process. They can't pay you more than the value you create. And if you understand how you can create value according to the job description, and even potentially how you could create more than they're asking for, that's a winning strategy also. You're going to be able to think about and share stories from their point of view. What's keeping them up at night? What are they struggling with that you can easily come in and help them with? That's the way you want to actually present your information. And you're also, and this is super important too, not risking taking a whole bunch of time applying for and going through an extensive interview process for jobs that you don't even want when you actually find out more about them. So today, I've given you a context for all of this. We're just focusing on the bullet points. To that end, I encourage you to have a simple format and compelling content. Not a lot of bells and whistles, not a lot of colors, not a lot of funny structure to the resume. The Yale SOM template, which is included in the alumni resources on the career resources on the alumni portal, is simple. It's in Times New Roman. Arial is a great resume font too. And I wanted to share this with you because, believe it or not, some fancy fonts that people like to use won't be translated effectively by certain applicant tracking systems when you upload your resume. Have you ever gotten a garbled text from someone who's on a different platform and the emojis didn't come through? That's not what you want your resume to look like when you've uploaded it to an ATS. So going to the next piece here, bullet points is what we're focusing on. You do have these resources. They are on the alumni portal. And I just wanted to remind you, there's a SOM career development guide for working professionals. There's the Yale SOM resume writing guide. There's a Yale SOM resume template for working professionals. There's an action verb list and other things there too as well. You see the recorded career webinars you can look at also at the very top of that CDO resources page. So lots of places for you to look for content and information that's going to be helpful to you. But now let's kind of move into the aiming place now that we've kind of gotten things together. We have a plan and we've begun to assemble our resume bullet point toolkit, similar to our archery kit. We're ready to think about taking aim at what opportunities we're really excited about. Simply talking about how to write a resume isn't enough for you to be able to craft really compelling bullet points. So you need some practice and you need a few rewrites. So we're going to talk about how to line up the target, how to tailor your comments to your audience so you know the resume bullets actually do hit their mark. In a resume or in a conversation, it's a lot easier to connect with the other person, to captivate and pique their interest if you know something about them. What will they say yes to? What's going to be powerful to them? Those powerful bullet points are going to tee up a productive dialogue in an interview that after reading your resume, they're going to be really excited to get scheduled. More interviewers care not about what you've done in the past for other people, but what great things they believe you can do based on the evidence you present, you can do for them. It's a future focus. It's a marketing document where they are center stage, not a recounting of old stories or old companies that they're not actually a part of. The job description doesn't likely convey that though. So you know from your own experience that job descriptions rarely share everything about the opportunity, particularly when the organization or department is facing significant challenges or change. So we're going to want to remember to unpack the role. And we had a whole webinar talking about unpacking the role. In order to tailor the resume, you need to know what you'll really be doing. If you read through this description, you could say, yeah, I could do that, but you'd be no better prepared to make your case for why you would be a great fit. Unpacking what you'd be great at and why, and what they're asking for in this instance would really help them to understand how you think and how you might be to work with. Showing them you have vision that you can lead by clarifying this particular business issue. I'm looking at this and I'm curious, leadership to who? relationships with who, what are the elements of complexity that they're dealing with, what environments, internal, external, what business issues, how do they define them? Is there responsibility also to implement the recommended solutions? Who decides if the recommendations or solutions are implemented, and who allocates the necessary resources? There's a whole lot of opportunities in here to ask questions that aren't necessarily clear by how they've written it. And taking the time to do this is really going to help you to prioritize what skills and experiences and successes you want to prioritize in your bullet points. Another way to get ready, whether you have a job in front of you or you're just preparing for informational interviews, is to dive in and do a keyword and a story brainstorm. Artificial intelligence screens and search engine optimization matters. If you think like a recruiter and they were doing a Boolean search for their role, would your profile pop up to the top before you start typing, whether for a resume or for that informational networking document? Take it offline. Having clarified your context from our revised strategy by making a list of keywords that are important to the role based on the job description or your general research, if that's the case, is going to help you to prioritize those bullet points. And also, it's a great final check when you're done with a resume to review that list to make sure that you didn't miss anything and that all the really important themes came through. So as an exercise to start, when we're done with this webinar, perhaps you'll take 5 minutes to give yourself time to think about all the keywords that employers might be using for the types of roles that you're interested in. If you haven't already written down maybe a couple of the job titles that you'd be excited by, that could be a great first start before you even get into the keywords. Note that I said in the roles you're interested in. That's super important to figure out, again, before you start making applications. There's a lot of jobs out there that you could do, but those may not be the opportunities that you're most excited by. So what 3 or 4 job titles would you like to accept? What skills is the employer looking for in that role? And what stories do you have then that support that you can deliver the results that they're seeking? If you can't answer that, it's going to be really hard for people looking to fill those roles to find you. These roles, or these ideas rather, are the building blocks for your personal brand, and that's going to be the topic of a webinar coming up in a few months. Taking this a step further, if you brainstorm stories that show, also from our revised approach to resume writing that I showed in the beginning, you're going to find accomplishments that demonstrate those skills, and you're going to be sharing the ones that you want to share, not necessarily everything you know how to do, but really those that you want to do going forward, including results, scale, and scope. So you're going to work on your resume for specific positions. You're going to have a place to start. From there, you can start to tailor your resume and those bullets to include the details that are most important for those specific roles that you're looking for. You're not starting from scratch every single time if you do this really thoughtful work up front for the types of roles and industries that you're looking to join. A lot of information so far, and we're still in the aiming part. We haven't started writing yet. Another piece I wanted to remind you of is that translation is your job. You need to let them know that you're going to be able to really successfully navigate their environment. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Like big cities, companies that look alike on the surface tend to operate very, very differently. Tokyo has distinct smells and sounds and just feels different from New York. Who's used the subway in New York City, the metro in Washington, D.C., or the L in Chicago? They all do the same thing really differently, and they're built using incredibly different infrastructure. If you really want the job, please make the investment in time to understand their language and their ways of doing things so you can make a resonant translation to them. They don't know your old language. Help them to see that you do understand and respect their world and that you'd be successful in it. A question that they're probably going to ask you when you step in for an early interview is, why this company? Why this job? And this preparation, again, helps you to answer those very, very clearly for yourself before you apply, and for them when you're actually making your case in an interview. Many companies have really robust career pages that can help you with this translation. Some even have educational materials that can help you close specific skill and language gaps. An example is Salesforce's Trailhead Academy. When you take this approach, sharing this relevant experience, you really distinguish yourself from most other applicants who haven't figured this out or aren't willing to take the time. In case you're interested also, I wanted to just share this little piece of information. The term bullet comes from the French bullet, meaning small ball, and the Latin bulla, meaning bubble. A bullet point can be defined as an item in a list that has a dot in front of it to signify importance and to call it out, give it special emphasis. Everything you've ever done does not deserve special emphasis, and not sharing something in particular in a curated resume doesn't take away the fact that you've done or achieved that thing. It just means that it's not something that is worth highlighting in this initial introduction. So how many bullets? As few as you need to make your case. The goal is not to tell everything about you in the resume. The goal is to get them to say, I want to know more about this person. So usually that translates into 2 or 4 bullets per role, with fewer bullets for your earlier roles. So again, we're translating and we're being thoughtful about what they need. Going right into that, it's relevant experience we're sharing. You could tell them everything, or you could just be thoughtful about what's important here. I shared with you earlier the slide of all of the arrows going towards the going in a direction. I'm not even sure in that picture if it was going towards a target or not. This is like shooting cannonballs, right? When you share everything, when an arrow would do, you're sharing what you're shooting cannonballs, and that's maybe overkill. Before we get more into the how to write the bullet points, I really want you to think about how a lot of resume writers ask you to compile all of the information you have, every scrap of professional experience that you've ever done, to put together into a resume, one and done. That idea is not going to, as we talked about earlier, hit the target as squarely as you'd want it to, because people aren't going to take the time generally to sift through everything you've ever done. So when you're creating this comprehensive list, it can be helpful, going back to that brainstorming idea around skills and experience. It's rarely helpful or useful to a reader who's looking for that specific role. Too much information, you're going to show up as a problem to them, and they're going to have to figure it out. And they probably aren't looking for another problem. They're really looking for a solution to that problem that they've put the role out for. So please focus on your relevant experience, applying in their language based on your research and understanding of the role. Share what's useful, not merely interesting, and worse yet, distracting or otherwise irrelevant. Show, don't tell that you understand what they're looking for and what's required for success by what you choose to share with them. What they're looking for is likely also different from what you've done in the past, and that's the historical approach that so many resumes take. So again, we're talking about sharing just what they need in language that they understand, and sharing it in ways that they feel like you're already maybe part of the team, and you really could step in tomorrow and make a difference. A lot of aiming there too, a lot of getting ready, a lot of aiming. Now we're ready to think about firing. Building on that strategic planning and research that we've done, all of that thoughtful preparation that you've done in the ready and aim, we can start to think about what we're going to say in specific distinct bullet points. A couple of reminders here. Themes need to emerge. Every single bullet point is important in the resume, and every single bullet point is not necessarily going to be read. A single bullet point isn't enough to make your case for very important things that are part of the role. Some reviewers are going to read everything until they make a decision one way or another. Hopefully it's going to be positive for you. Some are going to scan and they're not going to read everything. So some are going to read top down, some are going to skip around. Some will read your thoughtful context-setting summary statement, and some are going to skip that entirely. So really thematically, your whole resume needs to hold together, and distinct and important bullet points that are parts of the role aren't necessarily going to be able to stand alone. If they're the third bullet point in the fourth job, oh, I've done that already, they're never going to read that. So let's start with the end in mind. As a resume writer, you're a storyteller, and I want you to think about the stories that you're going to be able to share about your prior experiences that are going to be able to really help people to know that you're a great fit. These stories in these little previews, these bullet points are going to captivate them, leading them to be excited to talk to you and to learn more. So if we think about some of the prior bullet points you maybe have written in the past, they maybe haven't been quite so exciting as what I'm trying to share in terms of a story preview. When you're sharing your stories, they can actually see themselves in the stories that you're telling. They're eager to turn the page, so to speak. They're wanting to learn more. They want to schedule the interview. I need that. I think they can help. That's kind of where we're trying to go here. Borrowing from the cinema, I sometimes describe the resume as a sizzle reel of your very best clips, sharing in bullet points the previews to the stories you'd like to share in the interview. Just like you can't actually cut a movie trailer until the film is in the can, you can't write a great bullet point until you know what story you'd like to tell and what your reader is going to care about. What your reader is going to scan for, what they're going to find most engaging and compelling is important. It's going to depend on their perspective and their personal preferences, as well as their experiences. Again, this is why we take a pause at the beginning, getting ready, creating context, and being thoughtful before we start to write the resume and write the bullets. Note that some some interviewers are going to use your resume to formulate their questions, and others are going to follow their own process or ask behavioral questions that force you to decide in the moment, which story do I want to share to demonstrate this point? Some companies are now leveraging video screens where everybody is evaluated in exactly the same way, given the exact same video prompts to answer and the same amount of time to record their response. Regardless of the process for the interviews, your careful preparation of stories and bullet points is going to help you to shine when you do get to that storytelling stage. So bullet point best practices, let's dive in with a few of those. Lead with what's most important to them. Again, you're going to have learned this through the process of review in the beginning. We're going to review a couple of examples in just a couple of moments of real bullet points that illustrate some of the guidance I've already shared. If the reader skims quickly and they only look at the first one or two bullets under each role, are they going to find what they care about most? It's okay to use simple sentences and sentence fragments. You do want to make sure that you're using consistent formatting. If you make it easy for them to find what they're looking for, they're going to read on. If you make them work, they might not. Whatever formatting you choose to use, though, please be consistent. Please don't also get hung up on your quantitative measures exactly if you don't have them. There are many, many ways to identify and articulate your impact. Sometimes it's going to be a tangible result in terms of dollars or numbers or percent change, and sometimes it's scale or scope. They're all different ways, quantitatively and qualitatively, that you can look at how you've improved or had impact, regardless of whether it's definitively measurable. This is another really important point. Edit ruthlessly. The phrase, "in writing, you must kill all your darlings," is attributed often to writer and Nobel Prize laureate William Faulkner. It means that we have to ruthlessly eliminate words, characters, side plots or twists, turns of phrase that we personally love, but that don't do anything for the story. It doesn't take away from the fact that you've done or achieved those things. It just means it's not the most important or effective marketing for this particular opportunity. It's still part of your personal story. So don't be afraid to take it out of a particular application if it's not relevant. Another important framework that is super helpful to many people is the STAR framework. Some people have referred to it as the STAR framework: situation, task, action, results. Your recruiter, your interviewers are most interested in the results. So we do need to make sure that they are in every single bullet point. I sometimes read through bullet points and I look at them and I say, so what? And if I can't answer so what by what's written, the bullet point, in my view, isn't done yet. Again, they care about what you can do for them. A little bit less about what you've done for others. Still, you need to convey your ability to deliver results. It also puts really strong focus on the skills that you will use and that you're going to share with them, not explanations of your prior company. Great bullet points help to pull the reader in, having them lean in a little bit more, imagining you working with them on their problems. We also want to make sure that we're using active verbs. Passive language leaves the reader wondering if you did that thing well or if you screwed it up. That's tell language, and it's not necessarily engaging or memorable. Start with an active verb or result. We'll talk about that in a little bit, and be really, really clear about that result, where the active verb is how you did it. And double check to make sure that the reader will care about that particular result in the context of their in the context of their role. There's lots of lists of resume active verbs out there, including on the SOM Careers webpage. Details matter. Right now, there's not a lot of details on the screen, but there will be in a minute. Please make sure your details aren't too focused on terminology or issues that are specific to your old company. That could be distracting, as I mentioned before, or overlooked at worst. The point of each bullet point is to capture the attention of somebody skimming. And we want to think about what they're going to say, yes, good, and keep going, or slow down to engage with the content. What catches people's attention is going to vary by person. And this is why it's so important, again, to do that research up front. This is one of a few examples of how real job seekers have taken their transferable skills from prior roles and used them to transition to a new role. These examples were taken from real resumes of people who were able to make these effective transitions. And I want you to notice that each one includes clear, compelling results. Sometimes our resume bullets are present as tasks we've completed or in our prior positions, and others as a direct copy and paste of a poorly written job description. The T in STAR, the task, without the R isn't compelling. And as we move forward, we really want you to focus on your bullets as highlighting your accomplishments. The revision here gives the reviewer lots of things to ask about. The former, not so much, especially if the target company is not in the dairy industry. Also, note that you can start with the R. That's often a really great way to get the reader's attention. I'm going to explain to you why there's crayons here now. When my son, who's now 15, was in kindergarten, his teacher asked the students to, when coloring, please use 5 different colors to show details. It really was making it interesting to the reader. So do show, put yourselves in their shoes. What would they be excited to hear about? Think about how their challenges and their opportunities might sound like things you've successfully handled in the past. Please don't take for granted, that they understand what you know or what you've done, even if you're going for a promotion in the same company. You want to be explicit for every opportunity that you're applying for. The next example we're going to talk about is accomplishment statements. I wanted to also remind you, I showed earlier that there is additional guidance in the Career Development Guide for Working Professionals on accomplishment statements. The point on the left lacks anything specific that I might ask a question about. I don't even know if you did it well. That's nice. So what? What if you're making a transition out of the military? My company doesn't have any soldiers, so what you did here isn't relevant to me. Cite some accomplishments and measurements of impact for those who are interested in exploring your background and experience. The example on the right is a bit more engaging. There's lots of ways to add color and detail, even to what's written here today. Did you do your job well based on what evidence? Did you do it all by yourself? Did your direct reports like you? Did you inspire them and provide them with what they needed to do the job? Were they all in the same place, or were they all over the world? How did you stay in touch? What improvements, if any, did you make to any of the processes while serving this population? How did they identify the need? How did you measure the improvement? What did it mean to do that job well? What were the most successful programs you led, and how did they benefit your soldiers? What else? That's just a short list. You probably can come up with a bunch of other ideas of things that you could share in this hypothetical example, or actually this real example for somebody else, to really make it engaging for a reader. We also, moving on to the next point, want to quantify when possible. I talked about this a bit before. In this example, Widgeteria is a fictional company. After reflecting on the experience, the job seeker is able to add that they oversaw 4 distinct teams and they showed an increase in market reach and awareness. Again, quantifying accomplishment, bringing it into much clearer focus to the reader. So the quantification makes it a bit more interesting. In this final example, the job seeker added how they identified and addressed the gap that they talked about in the beginning, and how they suggested solutions to leadership, and that their efforts led to a 15% increase, another clear result. And in this case, notice that we started with the result. So you don't necessarily have to use STAR in that order. You can make it really compelling and interesting by sharing result, 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 where the reader is saying, I need that, yep, that too, and that one too. Bring this person in for an interview. We understand that not every single position in every bullet will be quantifiable. And we do encourage you to think through your resume now. Could you show exposure to clients or leadership, provide numbers of people that you've managed, or an increase in efficiency, or some other accomplished result, or expand on an area of interest? Having those stories handy, again, having gone through that brainstorming process up front, is going to help you to tailor all to new opportunities, highlighting those perspectives that are most compelling to your interviewer. So we've done a lot of firing right now in terms of different types of bullet points, and hopefully this is helping you to think about your resume and what some tweaks are, or adjustments, wholesale edits that you're going to create in the past. Before we send it, though, we've written a bunch of bullet points. Are we sure that we're ready? You've done a lot of work and you're excited to send the application through, and I'm asking you here to wait. Don't skip a final objective review. Take the time to examine the target and look to make sure that you're really going to hit the mark. It might mean stepping away for a few minutes and then coming back before you put the target, put the arrow back in the bow and pull back and prepare to take aim and let it go, sending your resume out into the world. Again, the measuring twice, cutting once, really thinking about visualizing that arrow hitting the target, the resume, catching the attention of the reader, and making sure that you've done everything you can to actually set that up to go well. Super helpful, so that you're not 5 minutes after you've sent it saying, oh, I wish I'd said. So take the time. Your preparation is going to help you to read your resume objectively from their viewpoint. What's most critical for success in this role? What will you be doing in the day-to-day? Thinking about skills and outcomes. Again, they're not always explicitly shared in the role descriptions, and your final review is going to make it significantly easier by having your earlier made notes about the role and its critical success factors. Did the right themes emerge, and have my bullet points set up the right question prompts so I'm ready to tell the right stories that are going to help them to know that I can thrive and succeed in this environment? Eye-catching tips. Again, we've talked about a lot of these, and I just wanted to reinforce them here. You have seconds to impress your reader before they decide whether to read your resume more thoroughly. Preview your success stories in well-organized bullets, leading with the most important first, being sure to share how you specifically and directly leveraged the relevant skills to influence the success of your prior employer or volunteer organizations. Some of your most powerful bullet points and experiences may not have been from paid work, and that's okay. Use those too. The easier your resume is to read, the more likely it will be to impress the reader. Great content in a confusing format, or worse yet, paragraphs, won't likely ever be read, much less appreciated. People skim down, not across or through text. So eye-catching bullet points need to leverage that. And again, I want to make sure that you're establishing themes, showcasing your expertise in an important area in the fourth job, third bullet. Again, not a winning strategy. If they happen to skip that bullet, your resume may be passed over for them perceiving you lacking some important requisite experience. And finally, be really rigorous in editing out extraneous words. You're writing for a target audience who's looking for some very particular things. Communicate succinctly, specifically, and generously in their language. Moving into wrap up. Today, as part of a much larger job search and recruitment process, we focused on impactful bullet points, those bullet points that are going to get you through to the interview and set you up to present your most compelling, relevant experiences, achievements, and skills into the interview process. This process of careful bullet point crafting and thoughtful resume curation does take time. It is a lot of work, and I've seen it get great results over and over. I wouldn't suggest it to you if I didn't. All that research pays off, helping you to know if it's an opportunity you would enjoy in an environment that you would thrive in. If you learn that it's not the right environment, your research becomes industry expertise and knowledge of competitors as you apply to others. When you do get your offer, your early research is also going to set you up to negotiate a really great package that maximizes value, not just for you, but for the hiring company as well. As a last motivating note, many companies are reaching out to candidates that they've rejected from other roles. So sometimes a no isn't a never, and it may be reframed as a not yet. Because of this, I do want you to please make sure you're using an email where you'll be able to be contacted if it's a month later or a year later. This is super important for recent graduates who may be still using their yale.edu addresses, because those will change. Or for anyone who uses a dedicated recruiting email and only checks it when they're looking. You might miss some great opportunities if you're not, kind of engaged and easily able to find. So the idea that some of our best opportunities find you based on you having shared your brand well on LinkedIn and networking and in prior interviews is an important thing to remember as companies are accumulating resume banks of people that they've worked with in the past. So again, we focused on our bullet points today, which we were able to write really clearly because we've clarified context, we did our research, we came up with stories that show, and we were curating them specifically for particular opportunities. So we are now ready to dive into some Q&A. And I wanted to remind you again, if you wanted to make a coaching appointment with me, you can do that through Yale's SOM Alumni Career Portal. And you'll be prompted to log into Career Management System, CMS. And there you can view my calendar and select appointment times that work for you. When making a coaching appointment, it's also really helpful to connect with me in advance on LinkedIn, so I get to know you a little bit in advance of our call. So as we're looking at some questions coming in, I think I see one in there that we'll get to in a moment. I did also want to remind you that there are many webinars that we've been able to do throughout the pandemic. So we built up quite a robust library that you can consult on your own, or potentially you've watched it and you want to go back and revisit some of the ideas in there. Wherever you are in your career journey, we're here to support you. whether considering a future change, searching for your next role, or contemplating career growth in your current company. You're likely going to find some good advice in here. Please don't also forget to check the events page on the alumni portal for future events. We actually do have our events for the spring already programmed in there that you can look and check today and put onto your calendar and register for. Finally, I'd like to say a big thank you to Kayla Heaslip, my colleague in alumni relations, who makes all of these things happen behind the scenes. Without her support, this wouldn't be possible. And Kayla is also going to share the survey link in the chat. So thank you again for the few minutes of time that you're going to take to share that, share your feedback there. But getting back into the questions, let's see what we've got here. Can we talk about how bullets would differ for C-suite roles? That's a great question, and I'm not sure that they would necessarily differ. I really think it's about looking at what's required in that role. I've been thinking a lot about, and we have a webinar coming up in March about board positions. We have an alum coming in talking to us about how to get your first board position and the types of things that board members need to think about. Those would be similar things that C-suite members would need to be thinking about. What are the challenges of the organization? At that level, I would also speak to the World Economic Forum Skills for the Future that I referenced in our January webinar about reimagining your career in 2021, and Jeff Schwartz also in our May webinar about Work Disrupted referred to. At the executive levels, and as we contemplate the future of work, silos are becoming much less prominent, and we're expecting senior leaders to bring in lots of data and assimilate it and work with artificial intelligence, interpreting data, layering it with other information, and making really high-level strategic decisions as a result of all of that. So as we think about that, kind of creativity, influencing skills, we're showcasing a lot more of our ability to lead, influence, and affect strategy, also to pivot. I loved the early meme that came out in March, April of 2020, that 100% of people who had a 5-year plan 5 years ago were wrong about what they would be doing in 5 years. So the other thing that our senior leaders need to do is to be really resilient and innovative and open to different challenges. So there might be some examples of not specific, kind of functional expertise, but really how do we actually bring information together, solving, complex problems for the benefit of a broader organization that considers all of our stakeholders. And if we think about the integrated curriculum at Yale, and you go back to thinking about some of those elements that were discussed in the executive courses, those would be great places to start in thinking about how have I begun to, even at a lower level or mid-level manager, begun to really express or expose myself as a strong senior level leader. So again, it's going to be very different, job dependent. It will be different for an existing company who is, kind of chugging along and working with a, kind of existing set of competitors. And even those organizations are being just differently disrupted today. I was speaking to somebody earlier today about the current situation with supply chains. So we're needing to be really differently focused on customer satisfaction when we can't deliver them the products that they ordered, 6 months ago because they're sitting in containers that we can't get to. So the challenges that senior leaders experience are varied, and you're going to want to be really thoughtful about not just what's happening in the company that I'm applying to, but what's happening across those competitive organizations, or even other industries, which might be you might be able to consider in terms of what changes or challenges might be coming for that one. So it's a bit of a convoluted answer because the job is a bit convoluted and it's complex. It's really going to be situationally dependent. Hopefully that answers that question. I'm not seeing any other questions right now. I know I spoke quickly and I shared a lot of information. If there are any other questions, I'd love for you to, kind of pop those in there now. And if not, Kayla, was there anything that you're aware of that I missed, or any questions that you saw that I didn't?
No, I think you covered what came in. Thanks, Cindy.
Whew, I could have spoken a little more slowly than I expected. A couple of more questions. Then I'll give everybody a few more minutes back in their day. Hopefully, maybe you'll take that 5 minutes and start brainstorming some of those keywords or stories that I mentioned to you earlier. And again, I want you to, remember that we're here to support you. And if you do have questions today or in the future about this content or others, I look forward to seeing you in my coaching calendar. Thank you again, Kayla, for your work. Thanks everyone for your reviews and your feedback. And I will see you in our next career webinar.